stress has to be, the stress, anxiety, whatever we want to call that, it has to be learned in the presence of non-danger. It has to be learned. And yeah, that kind of energy that is, or the ways that the mom tends to respond, if the kid sees, oh, that's how you respond when that happens. Like, let's just use the example of a spider. It was in the other class. We were doing yoga last Thursday, and so we had all the mats out, and there was a spider. Somebody saw a spider, and there was a girl there who just started freaking out. Oh no, spider. It couldn't possibly hurt her. But for whatever reason, she's been conditioned, and I'm not putting a judgment on it. That's not bad or good. That's just how she's learned. When there's a spider, this is how I respond. And the kids if that's how they see that's how people respond to spiders, that's how they'll also respond to spiders. But if you had somebody who goes, oh, okay, no big deal, and you send it to spider heaven, or whatever you do with it, put it in your hand and take it somewhere else. I mean, whatever you decide to do with it. But if that's how you respond, you could use any example, bees. Some people are scared to death of bees. Other people are, have beehives. And they're like, oh, no big deal, I have the bees. And if the kids see that that's how they're responding, they're learning. Oh, that's how you are with bees. Or that's how you are with, and you name it. So whatever that is, Alexis, that is the things that you see happening, the kids are learning just because they're watching. And they go, oh, that's how we respond when that happens. Until somebody else can come along and go, oh, no, that's not how everybody responds. That's how they will continue to respond. And that's the whole point of this whole class is getting to a point where we go, oh, I've got a test. Okay. Instead of, oh, I've got a test. Right? Because all your life you've been told, test. Until somebody comes along and says, you're not going to die, and you'll probably have a good experience, and you've been able to handle this before, so why would this be any different? And you go, oh, okay, I guess I don't need to be how I've always been. And it's a muscle. It is a muscle that doesn't immediately, like I say all the time, there's not a quick fix for stress. You can't quick fix stress better. But just like any muscle that you work over and over, where you see the spider and you go, oh, wait a second, it's like an ant. It's not going to hurt me. I can think differently about this, or the snake, or the bees, or the test, or the calling up somebody to ask him out, or whatever it is. Does that make sense?
I think it should, really.
Yeah. I think every human should be immersed in this stuff somehow. It's conditioning. It's nobody has stressed genes. And people who, but I do have to say that there's been studies showing that when a mom is stressed, the baby in the womb is more likely to be more conducive to stress, more likely to be stressed about things than the mom who is calm in the womb. It's not DNA, it's congenital or learned, but it's not DNA. Well, I think that's where that comes from, is the training, the personality. Because I don't know if kids, if a 0-year, like my daughter just had their baby. had their first baby. My daughter and her husband had their first baby. I don't know that this kid comes equipped with a personality, so much as by living with the mom and the dad, that personality develops over time, and if it is more stress conducive, then yeah. Like if they have a type A, so-called type A personality, where they've learned their whole life, I got to be on time and everything's got to be this way, and I got to be a clock and everything's, the type A personality, and they're more hostile. If they see that happening all the time, they don't know any other way. They don't know they can just, I guess I can handle it this way. Regardless of the differences, it's possible to retrain to, specifically with stress, to handle stress so it's not going to be the in-my-face kind of thing so much. I think it's possible. I mean, if we have free will, if we have the ability to choose, then we must also have the ability to take advantage of choosing differently. I mean, with all the life experiences that everyone has, I mean, you and I and everyone else in here has had a billion life experiences, all of which lend toward their decision-making and likelihood of making choices in one way or another. I don't know. Maybe there is a DNA component. Maybe there's more things even than that. I like to focus on what I can control, and that is, if I can choose to think about this spider this way rather than this way, and I feel more peaceful this way, that's the one I'm going to try to expand on. We're going to go in a direction that is just about as fun as any I ever go in. It's the heart of so much of stress management. And I urge you to take notes. If you can get this one principle and really get it, everything in your life will change. Everything will change profoundly if you can get this one concept down, this one principle, this one way of being. And so it's worth taking notes, but more your notes than mine. What insights come to you as we're talking here? Now, I want to start off with a question, and it might seem like, man, that's a dumb question to ask on a Tuesday morning in a stress management class. But I'm going to ask it anyway. We're going to see where we're going to go with this. Let's pretend we're going to wax philosophical for just a second. What's reality? Put on your thinking caps. I'm going to think a tiny bit more deeply today. What's reality? Okay, so let's do this. What's unreality? So the unreality of that would be what? Okay. Her belief that you were trying to be rude? Yeah. So how would you say that? Others' perceptions? Okay, let that one kind of float around. Right now, did you say? My thoughts? So that's the opposite of what Jen said. Say that second part of it. You're 5'10", 170 pounds, and then what? Reality. So she just said my perceptions, and you said my perceptions. Rachel?
I guess I think reality is more
What's real?
Yeah, what's real,
How do you?
what's really in front of us, like what actually happened. Like, you know, like you're saying, she tripped and fell. To me, that's just the reality. She tripped and fell. That's what happened. That seems like that's reality. What went on in either person's head is their perspective, not necessarily like the physical world around us, the actual events that happen. I don't think we can change reality. I think reality is what it actually is.
So I'm going to, with what you said, tell me your name again. Austin, right. So what I hear both of you saying, see if I'm understanding if I put you two together. The car was going 70 miles an hour and collided with another car. The guy who was driving was an idiot. Yes? Could the guy driving be an idiot and be the reality? Okay, so here, let me ask you this question to throw a curveball at you. If this weren't enough curveballs for one morning. So I had a student, she was non-traditional student, probably late 30s, and I've had a few people like this, but she was the most this way. She would tell me after class, I saw your aura today and it was kind of yellow. And I'd say, really? I don't know what that means. Experientially, I've never seen my aura. She said, oh no, it was yellow today. Most days it's light blue, but today it was quite yellow. And then she said to me, she came into my office one day, true story. She came into my office and she said, and I want you guys to tell me, with what we've said so far, how would you square this one? She came into my office and she was looking at me, and I had my desk. It was like, here's my desk and the wall, and she's sitting here facing me. And she said, there's two people in here with us today. She said, that guy, he looks like this, and there's a lady over here, and she looks like this, and they're just kind of over there in the corner of the room. And she had never taken any drugs. She was as much of as a normal person as you and I. And she saw those two people. She says, yeah, I see people on cars all the time. She said, there's people on people's hoods all the time. I see them a lot. So I did this. I actually did this. I went, really? She says, oh yeah. And she described him. Just like if I were describing you, blonde hair, cool black and white shirt. She explained it the same way. So, was what she told me real? Based on what we've talked about so far. The one thing that I think runs through all of these, what we've said here, is my experience of what is, however that shows up for us. If it's a bus that hits us, is that reality? If a bus hits you, is it reality? How do you know? Because you experienced it, right? If she sees those two people, is that her reality? How do you know? She experienced it. Was it my reality? No. I've tried. I've had more students from my mind-body wellness class mostly who've said, here's how you see auras. Here's the way you do it. And I have tried and tried and tried. I want to learn how to do this, what you guys can do. Nobody has one. In my experience. Now, does that make my experience wrong? I'm wrong. Okay, now, see, you might think, well, where are you going with this? What does this have to do with anything? My experience of what is, kind of what you said. I agree that whatever that is for me, this is my experience. Now, here's the next question for you. So if we say, here's reality, if we've decided this is what is real, is what we experience, is it possible to experience your own future? But can you have the experience of getting hit by the bus in a future moment? Can you have the experience of tomorrow's lunch? You can have it right now, tomorrow's lunch. If it were possible, I'm serious, I would do this. If it were possible to live anywhere but what I'm experiencing here and now, I would go into my future, like a year from now, find out which stock is doing the very best. I would find out how it did, and then I would come back to now and buy $1 zillion of that stock. Nobody can do that. I don't know anyone who can live in their own future. I don't know anyone who can live in their own past. See, our experience is always here and now. The experience, in other words, what is happening can only be experienced as it's happening, which can only be here and now. You can't eat last night's dinner again. You can remember it, but that's not experiencing it. That's thinking about it. You can't gain those calories when you're thinking about it. Now, sure, you can have some physiology that kind of, we'll do something later on where you'll imagine something and you'll have a physiological effect. There is an impact, but it's not the same as experiencing. Now, I know that's like, man, that's too much thinking about stuff. Okay, follow me on this. Because people, if we want to get the upper hand on stress, we have to get this one principle. So what I know about reality is it's my experience that's happening here and now, and what did we say? 99.9% of the time, our here and now reality is stress-free. How can we test that? How can we immediately test that? Look at your experience and say, is there a bear? Or is there anything that's genuinely dangerous? If we walk through our days, we've gone through this before, it feels like this most of the time, as far as safety is concerned. Correct? So, the question is, if this is our reality, and there's no stress in our here and now, why would we ever be stressed? Because our minds shoot, and remember, the things we make up about stuff. This is really important. You guys got this correct. We make up stuff that are thoughts into the future or thoughts into the past, and we include any kind of uh-oh thought in there, or doggone it, something like that. You know, shoot, that wouldn't have happened. And you relive the argument over and over again. Fear is entirely a future-looking thought. Every fear that you have, think about it, and we'll get into this more deeply, but whenever you fear something, it's not about what's going on right now, is it? You have a fear that this is going to be an outcome, and there might be some pain there. Got it? Now, I don't want to go too much into this, just enough to say, this is the cause. We said the uh-oh thought is the cause, but it's always, one addition to that, the uh-oh thought is also relating to a future or a past event, almost always. Or a future or past situation, a future or a past something. It's not about what's now. Now, where I'm going with this is, what our next thing to learn is, how do we bring our awareness to right here, where there is no stress, as opposed to, oh no, that's going to happen, or wish that wouldn't have happened. When we take our mind into the present moment, and we recognize the safety of the present moment, our body goes, oh, this is great. There's no threat thoughts. I'm okay here. Let me tell you a quick story. I didn't understand this principle, but it happened to me once. I was at Brigham Young University, and I was taking a test. And down at BYU, they have a testing center that is this big square plane. I don't know if it's still the case, but back when I was in my undergraduate work, it's this gigantic 600 people sitting in desks taking tests all day long. Just, you can imagine the stress that's made up there. So, and I was in a program called Family Financial Planning. I was planning to be a financial planner, help everyone make billions of dollars, and then in the process, they would pay me a whole bunch to help them that way. And I was in a class that was kind of an economics, individual economics class. And this class was like pivotal. If you don't do well in this class, you don't go on and do well in the program. You've got to do well in this class. So it was a really important class. And I was taking a test. It was one of those really important tests. And I went to the testing center. We studied for 3 weeks to prepare for this test. And I was nervous as could be. And I went in the testing center, and this was back, you gave them your card, and then you get the Scantron and the test, and you go and sit down for 2 hours, and you take the test. And I was sweating bullets, just, man, it was the stinking hardest test. And I went back, gave him the Scantron, gave the person at that desk the Scantron, and immediately I got my score. And it was a D. And my mind immediately, this is exactly what happened. This is what my mind did. Oh no, oh geez, oh no, oh geez, oh no, what am I going to do? What's going to come of me? That's stupid. Why didn't I study more? I was back and forth. You know how your mind does. Why didn't I practice more? Why didn't I study more? If only I would have done that. If that lady wouldn't have done, why is she such a bad teacher? All these things. What's going to become of me? I can't be in this major anymore. All of these thoughts are just flooding my mind. As I'm walking, it was October. It was a little bit later than this in the year. And it was on BYU campus. And I remember this so clearly. As this was going on in my mind, I was walking back to my car from the testing center, and You think parking problems are bad here. Holy cow. It's like times 10 at BYU for, you have to park 6 miles away just to get on campus. At least you did back then. It was horrible. So I had a long walk back to my car. So I'm walking back to my car. I remember exactly where this was. And it was, it was early October, and the sun was setting. And as I'm having this, and I feel as I'm doing this, going here and here and here and here and here, and the uh-oh was just screaming in my head. And I felt myself getting more and more anxious, more and more tense, more and more, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And my brain felt like it just wanted to explode. And somehow, and I don't know how this happened, but some part of me, some little voice went, stop. And I went, shut up. You know how you have conversations with some part of you smarter than all the other voices? I have that anyway. And I said, shut up, I'm too mad. And no, this voice said, stop. And I went, what do you mean, stop? And the voice said, just sit down. And I thought, I'm so ticked off. All I can think about is, what am I going to do? I can't survive this major, and what's going to become of me? All these kinds of thoughts. And I don't know where this voice came from. It said, sit down. And there was a bench there. And I sat down, and the voice said, just watch. And it was the coolest thing. The sun was setting over Utah Lake, and all of the trees were just gold and brown and orange and reds and yellows, a few greens. And this little voice said, just look, just watch. And I watched as the line of the sunset, the sun went down and the line went up the mountain. And the colors were just exploding off the trees. And then after a little bit, they just started fading as the sun went down. And I stayed there for about a half hour. And this little voice said, that's better, huh? And I went, but I want to be mad. I want to be ticked off. I want to be afraid. I want to be all these thoughts that I'm having right here about, I deserve to be really upset right now. And this voice said, this is better. Watch. And for that half hour, I just soaked it in. I soaked in what I could experience right here and now. And instead of going here and here, here and here, here and here, I put my attention here in what was happening, what I could directly experience, and my stress levels went through the floor. And I went, huh. And this was back long before the word mindfulness had ever hit any magazines or newspapers or anything. It wasn't even a word that people used in their conversations about being here and now. But I went, huh, that is better. And I went back to my car, and things just worked out like they usually do. And yeah, I changed majors a couple more times before I finished in a worthless psychology degree. Who's our psychology person? No offense at all. Please don't take offense. I loved psychology, but it didn't get me there's no jobs with a bachelor's degree in psychology. Wonderful degree to study. Anyway, it was on that day where I went, that is different. I'm not used to focusing on what's going on right here and now. And the instant that I did, all of that stress just went, phew. And And I said, it was at that point where I said, I got to know what that is. I got to know what's going on. What are the mechanics of this, what just happened? How do I make that moment to moment my reality, as opposed to walking around with so many fears and so much anger always going on? And so since that time, I've been really studying this concept of mindfulness. Let me give you, first of all, the best. There's a lot of definitions of mindfulness. I used to have an overhead, and we could, but I want you to write this down. This definition is by a gentleman named John Kabat. That's K-A-B Zinn. It sounds like he's some. He's an American, lives in New England. But that's his last name, is John Kabat Zinn, and he's probably written as much of the Americans who've written about this. He's probably written as much as anybody has. And he said this: mindfulness involves intentionally doing one thing at a time. Mindfulness involves intentionally doing one thing at a time and making sure. Mindfulness involves intentionally doing only one thing at a time and making sure I'm here for it. Mindfulness involves intentionally doing only one thing at a time and making sure I'm here for it. So, to put that in other words, what it means is consciously showing up in the moment with what is. Putting our focus on what's happening here and now, as opposed to what might happen in the future, or how we perceived that it happened in the past. In other words, keeping our mind on our experience, on our reality. One writer who really got this, he said, and write this down because this is cool. He said, notice what you're noticing. Mindfulness means noticing what you're noticing. Now, for some of you, this might be a totally kind of an idea that's never crossed your mind. I get that. It hadn't mine until that day where it was a conscious effort to place my mind here and now. And why would I ever do that? How do we... Let's use some examples to help us understand kind of the mindfulness versus the not mindful. When you're getting ready to take a test, or even when you're taking a test, what is it about the test that is creating any anxiety? Of the outcome. Is the outcome happening while you're taking the test? What did you say?
I just said the worry of keeping.
Yeah. Whenever you're thinking of the test by itself couldn't possibly be stressful, correct? We've gone through this. So we put our minds, the stress of the test is, man, and the if is future looking, if I don't do well, bad things will happen. Our body doesn't recognize that they're not happening now. Our body doesn't know a future. Our physiology, not not our frontal lobes, because that's our imagining, but the rest of our body, the endocrine system, the nervous system, they are only able to experience now. And so when you include ever a thought of, oh my gosh, or ooh, I wish, your body thinks it's happening now. We've gone through this before, right? So the whole point of mindfulness is to put ourselves here and stay there consciously. You can only think of one thing at a time. You can't have two simultaneous thoughts. You can think about a lot of things peripherally, but you can only focus on one thing at a time. So if you're focusing on here and now, you can't simultaneously focus on the past or the future. So the whole goal of being mindful is to fill up our awareness with what is happening here and now. Why would we do that? Did I say that? I know we're kind of losing some of you because I've been talking way too long. The whole goal of being mindful is filling up our awareness with what is happening here and now. Why would we do that? If you can only think of one thing at a time. Right. If you can only think of one thing at a time and those thoughts are always focused on here and now and there's no stress here and now because there's no perceived threat, you've just won the stress lottery. You've just figured out the solution to, this is why I say with plenty of confidence, stress is 100% preventable. Because all we have to do is be mindful. All we have to do is put our awareness here. No matter what test you're taking, no matter how important that person is who you're calling up, no matter what that spider looks like, 100% preventable. You ever been driving your car? Usually it's on the freeway when this happens. And you're driving along and then you realize, holy cow, I have no idea where I've been the last 20 minutes. And you've missed your turn, and 3 exits later, you go, oh, geez. And then you go back and you go, what was I thinking about? Were you thinking about what was happening here and now during that time? No, your mind was either here or here. And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Most of the time when we go future and past, I'm not saying don't ever go in the future and past. We'll talk about planning because we still do those things. We still remember. But if there's ever a stress, that feeling of stress and the resulting symptoms of headache and muscle pain, can't sleep, irritability, whatever it is, we can immediately go, oh, I can focus here and now. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Have any of you ever been driving? I'm driving such a good example. And you find yourself just gripping the steering wheel. It's like, what are you thinking of when you're just like, oh, man. Where's your mind just gone? I was driving my car back home one day, and I caught myself just gripping the steering wheel, going like that. And I went, wait a second. I'm perfectly safe in this car, and look at what's going on in my here and now. And I went, oh. And that's what we can do anytime. Anytime, doing anything. Some people say, well, I just can't. I can't possibly do that. I can't stay in the moment. I remember I was doing this workshop with this group of women one day. They had invited me to come speak on this. And they said, we can't possibly do that. We can't possibly think like you do, Mike. And I might have said this out loud. I'm not sure if I did. I think I did say it out loud. I said, you kind of really want to be miserable, don't you? And what does that mean? Why would I say that? You kind of really want to be miserable. What it means is they think it's more useful to be stressed thinking here and here than using the mental muscle it takes to get us here. Because it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. It's a simple process, but we think so much, I'm sure I need to worry about that thing. Thinking it's helpful. You with me? So how do we do this? There's 4 steps that move us automatically. If we'll do these 4 steps, if we'll do these 4 things, it will automatically take us here. Automatically. Guaranteed. But it's a muscle. So the first step, we'll go as far as we can here. The first step, and it started back in 1987 for me, when this first came to my mind. The first thing we do is we stop. Now, that doesn't mean we're walking and now we stop. What do you think that means? What does the stop mean? Yeah. Is that possible? So you want to put a 0.5.
Well, don't you think that that's part of it? Because when you're talking about the lady and how she was walking anyway, in her mind, she wants to be the victim, right? But before you can even go there, you've got to recognize that you're having those things, don't you?
For sure.
I think
100% for sure.
key to even know that you have to stop if you don't even realize what's going on.
Yeah. Not even being aware that this is what's creating this stress. Yeah, for sure. So that would be the 0.5, 0.9, almost 1. And then, now, how do we know how can we be pretty sure that we can stop our thoughts about anything, that we have some say in the matter about? Because, really, if you analyze your thoughts pretty accurately, they say we have 50 to 60,000 thoughts a day. The people who study this say 50 to 60,000 thoughts a day. I don't know how they measure that, but they say that's the case. So, it kind of looks like this, doesn't it? Here's thoughts coming and going. Out of nowhere, this is what my thinking looks like. Correct? Maybe that's just me. But that's what when I go inside and I watch my thoughts happen, that's what it's like. Over here, now it's over here, it's up here, it's up here. People say, man, I can't. When we learn how to meditate, people will say, I just can't stop my thoughts. I can't meditate because and they think they're the only ones. That's everybody. Nobody can. But how do we know for sure that we can have some control over this? How can we prove to ourselves that we actually can do something there? Have you ever had an argument with somebody, and then later on that day, you relive it and relive it and relive it. You just go over it and wish I would have said this, and how could you have possibly said that? And you find yourself getting more and more anxious. But at some point, you realize, I'm through thinking that thought. I'm tired of having that thought keep popping up on my mental screen over and over again. And you say, I'm going to think of something else right now. I'm going to think of, I don't know, some Hawaii or chocolate or the football game last night or whatever it is. You can choose to put any other thought in there. So, if that's the case, then we can put an end to whatever thought is the one that is sort of the stressed out, the threat thought that involves future and past. Okay, the next step, what do we do? So I'm going to put this over here. Number 2, this is where we start to gain some control, where we're the ones taking charge of what it is we're focusing on. So, look, what do you think that means? Where's a surefire place that you can look, where you can notice? But how do you tell what's around you? And how do you tell what's around you? Through your eyes, right? Can your senses ever sense anything? Both of you are exactly right. Can your senses ever sense anything in your future or past? Can you smell tomorrow's rose? Sounds dumb to say that, right? But your senses are always here and now. Now still, yeah, it's still your perception about things, but your senses are what allow you to tune into here and now as one thing of many things that we can go to. It's the simplest. And so you look and you say, what do I see? What do I hear? What do I taste? What do I smell? What internal senses? What am I missing there? What do I feel? Both physically and emotionally and internally. You know, if I were to say to you, okay, and some of these things will start to ring familiar. If I were to say, okay, focus for just a second on your breath. Let's do this for just a second. Put your pens down. I want to explore this for the rest of today because this is such a cool concept. Now, I want you to see if you can. I want to see how many of you actually can do this. Just sitting there, I want you to see if you can find anywhere in your body where you can sense your heart beating. Just go there for a second. Just kind of mentally go top to bottom, head to toe, I mean. Is there anywhere where you can notice your heart beating? Okay, was there anyone who said, no, I couldn't find it anywhere? So everyone found a spot in their body where there was a heartbeat? Okay, now, as you were looking at that one particular place, did you start to have feelings of, oh no, what if I don't find this heartbeat? Oh dear, oh no. Oh, I'm an awful heartbeat finder. Your mind didn't go, because you were so focused on what it was that you were focusing on. You were noticing what you were noticing, that you had vaulted yourself into the present, and your body went, oh, okay, this is more fun than being stressed. This feels better than being stressed. Here's another thing I want you to try. You need a blank piece of paper and your pen. And you're not going to turn this in or anything. You're just going to, I want you to have access to a blank piece of paper in front of you and your pen. Now, here's what I want you to do, and this is going to be awkwardly long. So now you're all suddenly going into the future. Oh, what does that mean, awkwardly long? Am I going to feel awkward now? See what we do? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to put your pen in your dominant hand, or pencil in your dominant hand so you can write, And I want you to put your non-dominant hand on the table so that your elbow is on the table so you can see your hand. Okay? Now what I want you to do for the next long, awkwardly long period of time is I want you to write down on paper everything you can notice about your hand. Just notice, write it down. Look again, notice, write it down. Look again, notice, write it down. And notice as I say that, notice the little voice in your head that's making up stuff. Remember the non-reality that Austin said of what's not happening is the judgments about this. And then go back to the reality of what do I see right now? What do I notice right now? So acknowledge that your mind's making up garbage about what it's all about. And then go back to, and I'm noticing this. So just everything you can possibly notice about your hand. And just write as fast as you can. And as soon as you feel like you've got it all, then look again with more than just your vision, more than just your sense of sight. Go to other senses. What do you feel in your hand? What can you hear with your hand? About your hand? What do you notice happening inside your hand? I know this is the stupidest thing you could possibly be doing. But watch what happens. Go. Stay focused. Write down everything that you can possibly notice. Okay, stop wherever you are. Put your pens down. Now, what became obvious to you? What are some of the things that you noticed as you were in this looking mode? What became apparent that maybe you hadn't it hadn't struck you before? A lot going on?
Yeah.
Did you get it all? Did anybody get it all? Like get everything that there was to notice? How long could you have continued doing this? A very long time, right? Some people think, oh, there's just nothing there. There's nothing. I think that's why we get bored, is because we tune out all the. Researchers say we take in about 1% of all the stimuli that's available to us. 1% of all the stimuli that's available to us. Why do we do that? Why do we miss out on it all? Because we're too busy thinking about this and this. And we miss out on this. Now, how many of you, while you were doing this, found yourself getting anxious, stressed? Nobody? Why not? What's the answer? Why was there no? There's nothing there, right? What did you say? There's no.
Why is it there's no fear?
There's no fear. Yeah, there's nothing to be afraid of when you're looking, because you're looking at a place where there is no imminent threat. Did any of you discover anything that you went, wow, I hadn't noticed that before? What did you notice? Isn't that cool? Now, she raises a really important point, and we're going to get into this next time. When you start becoming mindful, the ordinary suddenly becomes, wow, how cool is that? How many of you, just out of curiosity, how many of you wrote down that you have 4 fingers and a thumb? Who didn't write that down? Seems like the most obvious thing. 4 fingers and a thumb. There's so much there. There is so much there for us to discover, for us to find out about, for us to learn about, for us to notice. The whole point of being mindful is to suddenly recognize how amazing every single moment is. Because when you tune into that moment, it expands. When you tune in a non-judgmental way. And that's what we're going to... So on Thursday, we'll finish with this about how we do it, and then we'll put it into practice so that you discover how to work this muscle for real.